Hey everybody. Playing this financial game of life and retirement planning can be really mind-numbingly complicated and difficult, and it causes a lot of people to run in the other direction. But if you're serious about your money, and if you're serious about having success playing this game, stick with me through this entire video today, because today we're going to take on 3 myths that I think are being fed to everybody out there. And it's hampering the way we're playing this game, and it's hampering the success that people are experiencing out there. So we're gonna take on these 3 today, and we're gonna provide a little bit of education and a little bit of history lesson that I think you'll all find very enlightening and eye-opening. So stick with me to the end. We're gonna start with the first major lie that I hear told over and over in retirement planning is when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Have you ever heard that? So what I've got on the screen today, and I want you to direct your attention to this top left corner here, which is our total national debt. And it's kind of interesting. This thing is going to go up probably in the neighborhood of $5 million during the time you're watching this video. So you have to ask yourself, do you think it's going to cost more money or less money to run the government when you retire, depending how many years into the future that is? And I think most of you would understand at this point, it will take a lot more money to run the government in the future. And where does the government get money? It raises money through only one source, and that's taxation. And that's taxation that affects you. And is it going to affect the poor or the lower income class people? No, it's not, because they're not historically paying a lot of taxes. How about the top earners and the uber wealthy? There again, historically, they don't pay a lot of taxes. They have a lot of expensive lawyers and accountants, and they structure themselves in a way that they don't pay a lot of taxes. So really, this whole video and the burden of all of this is on you, the middle and upper middle class. So if this is our national debt today, $36 trillion. I remember when we first went over $1 trillion with a T, how weird that was. And now we're sitting at 36 trillion, and it's going up faster and faster every day. So they're going to need a substantial amount of money to keep this government and this financial system in place. And they're going to get it from you one way or the other. So if you're relying on income taxes to be lower in retirement, I think you may have a very big shock coming your way. The longer that you project out for retirement, or the further you are from retirement today, you have to understand, with many of today's common financial planning practices and retirement funding practices, there's 2 key things that you don't know. Number one is, what will be the tax rate that I will pay when I retire? And that's not a question you can answer today with any degree of accuracy or certainty. The second thing is what will tax policy be when I retire in the future? And that's also a question that you really can't answer very well today. An example of tax policy, there was a time where you could deduct credit card interest off of your taxes. That's an example of a policy. That policy is no longer in place. You can no longer deduct that. So how many variables are there in this game? And we've really been conditioned as a nation, as a generation, to accumulate the bulk of our retirement savings and retirement income in the stock market, in 401ks, in IRAs. And if you think about it, who really wins in that scenario? Who's behind the messaging, and who benefits when everybody's money is in the stock market? Well, I'll give you 3. Number 1, BlackRock. Number 2, Vanguard. Number 3, State Street. These are all the money managers and the big money companies that control probably 95% of the money on the planet. They benefit well when you store your money in the market. So let's take a look at just what some of these misconceptions look like. We're going to set aside taxes for a moment. We've kind of already addressed the fact that taxes have to go up. Mathematically, they have to at least double for us to stay in the game. So how they get that, and what tax rates they use, and which tax policy they use, there's no denying they are going to have to extract more tax dollars from you, the taxpayer, as we move forward in this timeline of life. The next thing I want to talk about is the projections. And when people think about, let's go back to, why do we store our money in the stock market? Well, we put our money at risk in that casino because we're hoping that we're going to hit blackjack and we're going to hit big wins. And that's really not how the thing operates. We talk about long-term returns of the stock market, and people use numbers anywhere from 8 to 10% as long-term returns of the market. And that may be true, but there's a lot of devil in those details, and I think that's what we're going to spend some time on next. What I've done today is I've kind of arranged a set of numbers as kind of just a data set, just one snapshot in time, and I'm going to do some calculations and show you some history, and I'll try to explain it along the way so that you can follow. But what I've done is I used, for an investment amount, I took from 1999 till 20 years after that, so 2018. And I took the maximum IRA or 401k contribution limit. So the maximum they would allow you to put into your employer-sponsored plan. That's your employee contribution amount. So I think that's a fair amount for somebody who is really serious about saving money and setting money aside for the future. So we're going to use those numbers for our contribution amount, and then I'm going to show you a couple different snapshots in time. And this is one that you're really going to want to stick around to the end, because there's some bombs that are going to fall here that are going to really shock and amaze you. So I'm going to start with saying, typically we hear people anticipating growth rates of 7, 8, 9, 10% when they talk about the stock market. Well, what I'm going to use here is, as my historical rate, I'm going to use the S&P 500, which is the large cap. And I'm going to use it initially from 1999, and I'm going to take a 20-year window of time. So this kind of represents a 45-year-old with 20 years to invest for retirement to age 65. So I've got a 20-year window of time, and I've got different contributions amounts, but based primarily on what the government limits have been. So the first thing is this is somebody who's maxing out their savings, their pre-tax savings. And please recognize, not many people maximize their savings over a 20-year period of life. So one lesson to learn right away: you cannot invest directly in the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is an index, and we as investors put our money into investments that tend to try to mimic the index. So we can never take full advantage of the timing of the S&P 500, the cost-free nature of the S&P 500. So we have losses and variables due to when our trades are made, what our fees are, all of these types of things. And I'm going to try to break it down from where that top line rate of return of the market is to what investors actually experience. So I'm going to start by saying here in 1999 and for 20 years forward, the market average, or the S&P 500 averaged 7.16. So that's a good return. That's a good representative number of long-term savings. So in our case here, we're making these contributions, and I'm just going to turn the market off for a minute and turn the payments on with zero return so you can see. In that period of time, if I maxed out my 401k every year from 1999 to 2018, 20 years, that means I put $301,000 of my own money into these accounts. And if they're pre-tax accounts, please understand, the $300,000 is not all yours. You've got a silent partner called Uncle Sam who owns a big chunk of that. As a matter of fact, they own as much of it as they choose based on the tax policies that they put in place. So we'll set that aside for a minute, and let's just talk about the math of the market. So if I turn the market back on and I turn my funding off, just so you can see, pure rate of return. The market did 7.16. Now watch what happens when I turn on my payments or my contributions to the market. So I turn that on, and you see that I start here with $10,500, and I'm increasing as the 401k was allowed to increase, and it topped out at $18,500. So my $300,000 turned into $679,000, or it approximately doubled, a little bit more than doubled, over a 20-year period. So when we talk about the rule of 72 and a lot of these thumb rules out there, that's the math of how long it takes my money to double in value. So if I had $300,000, it would take me the rate of return divided by 72 to come up with how long it would take me to double. But getting back to the actual math of this, in that particular 20-year period, one thing to note, the market did 7.16, and in my hypothetical funding, I did 7.94 net. Now, why is that different? The difference comes because we have different amounts that we're investing each year. So if you invest some and it's a down year versus if you invest more in an up year, it's those timing things that matter and determines the actual rate of return that you, the investor, experience. You will never get to experience the average rate of return. All you will ever get is your actual rate of return. And that's what we're showing here. So if you maxed out for those 20 years, you would actually do slightly better than the market, but we're not done yet because there's other factors at play. This is just taking into account the amount and the timing of your deposits and how they overlap with the actual market performance in those years. So this is a good period of time. However, if I start to add expenses, and this is some of the other things that take away from the actual market performance, I'm going to put in a 0.5%, so very, very low, typical 401k kind of a plan. So I'm not talking about you're out there privately buying mutual funds and paying sales loads, or you're not investing with a money manager. You're just using a low-cost 401k. And I take a 0.5% fee out of that money. You can see it drops me down to 7.43 for a difference of 3.8%. So we're still doing pretty well in this period of time, but going back to, does everybody max it out each and every year? Because if you don't, it starts to really matter what years you missed, what years you overfunded. And it's very easy for me to look back 20 years. Your challenge is you have to look 20 years into the future with none of this knowledge. So I'm hoping this will put some feelings in your mind to really question and challenge, how does this stuff work? Because the next thing I'm going to show you is, what if I used a different time period of the market? This was one 20-year period. Watch what happens if I take this back and I go to 1989. So the same deposits are made, same timing. I'm just going to use the market returns from 1989 and 20 years in, and I want you to watch what happens. Here in this market, the market itself over those 20 years averaged 10.36. So now we're talking about really good market years, a good long-term average, but a lot more volatility in those years. So again, because you have different deposits across those years, it matters when. So what was your rate of return during that period of time? 4.03. And that's because of the timing and how your deposits overlap the market. You missed the market by 61%. And this is still pure math. We haven't put any real life into this yet. Expenses, delays, missing years, all of those things factor in. So if I go back here and I have my 5.5%, take that out for a second, and now I did 4.65. So you can see these fees don't have a very large impact on your overall investment, but that comes based on the when. When are these investment returns happening? And this is a standout year that I think you've got to be aware of, because when you're starting, you don't get to choose what market returns you get. I'm just showing you different periods of time. In one period of time, the market did 7, you got approximately 7. In this particular case, the market did 10, you only did 4. So what do we see people doing? In some cases, if people are particularly astute, they're making their portfolio more balanced. We're diversifying. And what does that look like? So in this case, if I take it down to a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds across that period of time, which is probably more likely for most people. I don't think most people put 100% stock market in their portfolio, in their employer-sponsored plans or their 401ks. But for those of you who do, this is the ride that you got. If you diversified and followed good financial planning advice, and you put a 60-40 in place, well, now you earned 5.25. You actually did better than all stock market returns. That's not always the case either. There are cases, plenty of cases. If I go back to 1999 and I take us back to a full stock portfolio, again, our 7.16 of the market, we did a little bit better. But if I put that into a balanced portfolio, I only did 6.24. and my ending balance is 564, not doubling anymore. Going back to this period of reckoning, 1989. What if I started 1 year different? Just 1 year different. If rather than starting saving in 1989, I started saving in 1988. Now the market did 13 and I did 10. I hope you're still with me on this, because this is showing you that just the math and timing alone of when you start. People say it's time in the market, not timing the market. Well, I'm showing you here, same amount of time in the market, but it's the timing of the market that's making all the difference in the world. You start your retirement saving at 1988, you do very well. You wait 1 year in 1989, and look what I end up with, $474,000. So in one case I had $624,000, in one case I had $474,000. Same deposits, same investment, just different timing. So the lesson I want you to take away from this is the stock market is not the end-all be-all answer to retirement savings and retirement spending. We haven't gotten to the spending part of this yet. That's a whole different story. When I go to withdraw my money, how do I know how much to withdraw? Because again, my money is in the market. If I start from 1999 and rather than focusing on the accumulation, let's say that I'm now 65 and I'm planning to age 85. So a 20-year retirement window, and I want to pick what's the right amount? How much income can I take from the market? Well, in this particular case, this 20-year period, I had an 8% average and I did 9.13. So on my ending balance, I'm going to assume for a second that if the market average is 7 or 8%, I should be able to withdraw 7 or 8%. I hear Dave Ramsey say this all the time. You should be able to withdraw 8 to 10% if you're in good investments. Well, here's the best of the best. Investors always underperform the market. They always underperform the market index. There are very few professional money managers who, with any degree of consistency, outperform the market. They may a couple years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, but for a 20-year period to outperform the market is pretty rare. So when Dave Ramsey is telling us we can take 8 or 10%, I'm going to take 7% of this balance. So 629, 206, and I'm going to pick 7% of that. 629, do it right, Mark. 206, 7% of that is $44,000. So I'm going to come over here to withdrawals. And I'm going to specify a $44,000 withdrawal. And I'm going to take that each year from 64 to 85. I actually wanted that to be 65 to 85. So, my market average during this window of time was 7%. I ended up with 629. I took a 7% of that. And focusing on the withdrawals now, here's my withdrawal column. I took $44,000 per year out. I had the same 7.16% market. I had a 7.93 net return of the market. So same 7.16 market, I'm taking a 7% withdrawal. How does everything work out for me? So I start with the 624. That's my present value. Start at age 65 to age 85, withdrawing 7%, $44,000. And watch how this works out for everybody. Here's my account balance. I'm 65 years old. I'm trying to figure out how much I can spend in retirement. I figure the market can do 7%. It always has over long periods of time. I have a long period of time, hopefully, the next 20 years or so till I can plan my retirement. My withdrawal, you can watch my account balance, I didn't quite make it. I ran out of money early. So here's the third thing that people are told that I think can lead them in the wrong direction. Hire a fee-based financial advisor only. Don't talk to anybody else. It's a fee-based advisor. And what does a fee-based advisor do? A fee-based advisor charges you a fee on the assets that they manage for you. So I'm going to put in no longer just the plan fee, but I'm going to add in an advisory fee on top of this and hope that helps things. Well, historically it does. Believe it or not, having an advisor will actually help your overall performance numbers, but that's not the answer to the question. So if I were to add in a typical fee, and for somebody bringing $624,000 to a fee-based advisor, I'm going to tell you that the average fee on that would be 1.5. And people can tell you I've seen lower and I've seen less, but typically that cutoff is at $1 million where you start to see the lower fees. They start to give what's called breakpoints. But if you're under $1 million, very good chance you're going to be paying 1.5, 1 to 1.5. So I'm going to put in 1.5 in addition to the plan fee that you're paying, the very low cost of the overall architecture of where the money lives. And now, I still don't make it, but I run out even earlier. And you can see that here. Now I only made it to 13 years. Without the advisory fee, I make it to year 15 without running out of money. When I add the advisory fee, I'm sorry, that was a 5% fee. I make it to year 17. I run out in year 18. If I add the advisory fee to this, now I run out of money in year 13 because the added fees represent more money that has to be pulled from that portfolio. And it puts a very strong strain during spending. So if you can follow the math on this one, the market did 7.1 during that period of time. But you specifically experiencing those rates of return each year and withdrawing that amount each year, you experienced an actual market loss of 1.8. You lost money because you had the money in the market during that period of time. And then if this was a pre-taxed account, what would that look like? Usually people have their Social Security, their 401k, and maybe a pension or some other sort. But for the folks that don't have the pensions, just Social Security and their 401k, the money to pay these taxes that are due each year are coming from this account. So you take your withdrawal, that triggers taxes. When you get the tax bill, you have to go into your account to get money out to go pay the tax bill. When you take money out to go pay the tax bill, you create more taxes. And we call that circling the drain. So I'm going to give a nice low amount of taxes here, and I'm going to say total taxes is 15%. And I think I'm being generous. How does that work? Well, now I've run out at year 13. If I have only this account to pay taxes from, the money's got to come from somewhere. So I'm going to show it to take the taxes out of this account. You may have a different account, but either way, it's money that you're paying out. If I take this from this account, now I'm running out of money even earlier in year 12. And there's no solution for calculating this. I run out of money and I end up in the hole. So bottom line is, this will not support the level of retirement that you're thinking about, that you're planning for. So the lesson here, if you're using long-term growth projections and you're projecting growth in the 7, 8, 9, 10%, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and it's causing us as a generation to not put enough aside because we have rosy projections that I don't think we can live up to. And then when the tide shifts to retirement, the math changes altogether. Now it's really not the average of returns, but it's the order you get these returns in. So let's go back to our years here, and how does this work in 1989? Just another window of time. 1989, same conditions. Remember how disgusting it was on the way up? Now look at it on the way down. You actually fully funded your retirement. So depending on when you start, depending on when you're accumulating, depending on how long it has to last, depending on the timing, my lesson here for you guys is the market is volatile and dangerous to make broad assumptions. So if this was eye-opening for you, drop a comment in the comment below. If you want to see some examples of what you can do to get around all of this and avoid this problem, because if your retirement started in 1989, you're good to go. If it started in 1999, you ran out of money and missed by almost $500,000. This is easy to do. I can pull these numbers up all day long, but we can't do that moving forward. So you'd have to ask yourself, what risk are you willing to take on? And that's why so much money is thrown at the risk management market. So drop a comment below if you want to see more comments and more content like this. If you have questions, and if you want some help and some solutions for how to do this in maybe a more friendly way, where you don't experience this type of volatility and uncertainty, just drop the comment, help me in the comments, and I'll reach out to you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more. Please like and subscribe to the channel.